Dad, the house is mine now. Pack your things and get out tonight. That was the first thing my son said when he stepped into my home on Christmas Eve last year. No Merry Christmas. No hug. No, are you staying warm out here, Dad? Just an order, sharp as a blade. I froze in the doorway of my kitchen, still holding a mug of hot cocoa. The only thing that melted that night wasn't the snow on his shoulders, it was the part of me that had always believed family would never turn on their own blood. Ryan didn't look at me like a son looks at his father. He looked at me like an obstacle he needed to clear out of his way. And right behind him, Brittany walked in white wool coat, red lips, eyes colder than the ice forming on my roof. She glanced around the living room, as if she were pricing everything she saw. "You don't belong here anymore, Samuel," she said, her voice soft like she was ordering dinner at a fancy restaurant. "We'll be renovating soon." The moment I heard that, I knew they weren't here to visit. They were here to erase me from my own life. My name is Samuel Brooks. I'm 67, a retired electrician who's lived quietly in the little wooden home my late wife and I built brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. And on that Christmas Eve, my own son tried to throw me out like broken furniture. But what Ryan didn't know, what Brittany couldn't even imagine, is that some men, when pushed to the last edge of pain, don't fall. They wake up, and they give everything back, twice over. Before I go on, I know you're listening to this, maybe while you're driving home late at night, maybe washing dishes after dinner, or lying alone in the dark, thinking about things you've been forced to swallow in silence. If you're still here, let me know where you're listening from. Sometimes one small comment reminds me I'm not walking this road alone. And if this story makes you want to hear what came next, hit, like so it can reach someone who's been betrayed the way I was. Because Christmas Eve was only the beginning. The real storm came after. I remember that night clearly. Eugene was so cold, every breath turned into white smoke, clinging to the window glass like tiny cracks. My little cabin sat quiet beneath the pine trees, warm light spilling onto fresh snow. I had just thrown a few more logs into the fireplace, planning to spend the night watching old Christmas tapes of Mary. I wasn't expecting company, and I certainly wasn't expecting what came next. The front door slammed open so hard it hit the wall. Ryan walked in first. Snow dusted his shoulders, but the cold didn't make him shiver. If anything, he looked heated, agitated. His eyes darted around, not like someone visiting his father, but like someone inspecting property he thought already belonged to him. "Ryan, you couldn't call first?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He didn't answer. Brittany stepped in behind him, pulling down her scarf, her perfume thick and unfamiliar. She glanced at the fireplace, at Mary's photo on the shelf, and then at the wooden cabinet where I kept my documents. Small movements. But each one chilled me deeper than the winter wind outside. And then Ryan repeated the sentence, this time slower, pressing each word like a nail. "Dad, the house is mine now. Pack your things and get out. Tonight." I set my cocoa on the table. A ring of warm milk lingered on the rim, the last trace of peace that night would ever hold. "What are you talking about, Ryan?" I asked. "It's Christmas. Are you drunk?" "No." He was painfully sober. He pulled a stack of papers from his coat pocket. The edges were bent the way papers look when someone has been gripping them too tightly, too often. "I transferred the deed into my name," he said. "You don't need to live here anymore. We found you a better place." I picked up the papers. Under the warm light, I saw my signature, or rather a poor attempt at it. The strokes were too round, the angle completely wrong, and most telling of all, it didn't have my stamp, the same embossed mark I'd used on electrical permits for nearly 30 years. This is a photocopy, I said slowly. Where's the original 1 second? Just one. But I saw the hesitation in Ryan's eyes, the look of a thief caught with his hand on the wrong doorknob. Brittany jumped in instantly, scoffing. You don't need to see the original, Samuel. What matters is that we're taking care of you. At your age, you can't live alone anymore. We're doing what's best. I met her gaze. All I saw was cold ambition. No love, no gratitude, nothing but greed. At my age, I said, my voice low enough to scrape the floor. I can still tell when someone is lying. Brittany's jaw tightened. Ryan clenched his teeth. I knew what they were thinking, that I was old, that I was alone, that fear would make me sign whatever they shoved in front of me. But they forgot one thing. I've lived long enough to know exactly what it looks like when someone starts changing, and exactly what it looks like when trouble walks through your front door. I put the papers back on the table. No shaking, no fear. Just a sadness so deep it didn't need tears. If this is your house, I said, then where's the real deed? Ryan didn't answer. In that moment of silence, I heard the wind push against the roof branches, tapping the window, like the night itself knew something sacred was being violated. You don't have to do this, I said quietly. I'm still here, Ryan. I'm still your father. Ryan gripped the strap of his coat. You've lived alone too long. You don't see how unsafe this is. Brittany's right. It's time you let us handle your affairs. I laughed, not kindly. Handle the house, I said, or handle the money. Brittany's face darkened. Ryan looked between us, then at me. Are you accusing us of something? I'm not accusing, I said. I'm certain. His face drained of color. In that split second, I saw the boy he used to be. The child who held my hand on 4th of July as fireworks lit up the Oregon sky. But it was gone in an instant. Standing in front of me now wasn't my son. It was a man trying to build a lie big enough to swallow my home whole. And I knew then that Christmas Eve wasn't the night they betrayed me. It was the night they wrote the first line of their own downfall. If you ask me what hurt the most on that Christmas Eve, it wasn't Ryan's words. It wasn't the cold look in Brittany's eyes. It was realizing I had seen the signs before. I just didn't want to believe them. Every tragedy begins with small things, the harmless details we brush aside. And the cruelest people, they never start with a knife. They start with a smile. October 2024. A letter from the bank showed up in my old wooden mailbox at the end of the driveway. Big, bold title, request for refinance review. I stood there chilled by the early autumn wind slipping through my jacket, staring at the envelope. I hadn't requested a refinance. I hadn't taken out new loans. I hadn't touched the mortgage that was nearly paid off. I assumed it was a mistake. I tore it open, skimmed the page, and saw my name above a signature I had never written. If I had called a lawyer right then, perhaps things would have gone differently. But we always find ways to soothe ourselves, don't we? I'm old. Maybe the bank mixed up my file. Maybe I forgot something. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Parents always want to believe the best in their children. Always want to believe they would never cross a line. A few days later, the signs came faster. One Tuesday afternoon, while I was replacing the porch light, the landline rang. A polite, professional female voice from the bank. Hello, Mr. Brooks. We're calling to confirm your request to change your billing address. I froze. Change. What address? She repeated calmly. You asked to have all statements forwarded to Springfield. We just need your date of birth and the last 4 digits of your social security number. A chill crept down my spine. I had never lived in Springfield. I didn't request that I said. 3 seconds of silence followed the kind of silence where the person on the other end realizes something is off. Then you should check your accounts immediately, Mr. Brooks. That was the first time I felt something moving behind my back, something I couldn't quite see. Then came the emails. One message requesting a debt consolidation loan in my name. I don't have debt. No new cards. No loans to consolidate. But the email had all my details, my full name, my current address, and even my old address, the one Mary and I lived in 15 years ago. No one outside my family knew that address. And Brittany, she once told me she loved hearing old stories. Turns out she loved the parts she could use. Early November, I discovered the spare garage key was missing. I remember exactly where I kept it, inside a small glass jar, by the back door, a place only family members knew. I searched the house, the shed, the drawers, every pocket of every coat. Nothing. That night, I stood alone in the garage, staring at the empty spot where the key should have been, my heart sinking like a stone. I didn't want to believe what I was thinking. But if someone wanted to enter my home without me knowing, all they needed was the right key. Then there were Brittany's messages. At the time, they felt odd, but harmless. Dad, the city library is offering a class on minimalist living. Dad, have you looked into this new assisted living place? It's perfect for seniors. Downsizing is healthy at your age, Dad. Large homes are too hard to manage. I used to chuckle at her fake enthusiasm. Now I see them for what they were, not concern. A plan. Then came the strangest moment of all. One cold morning, I opened the front door to grab the newspaper and found a nursing home flyer wedged into the crack of the door. A week later, another one. Same home. Same flyer. Same precise spot. Nobody delivers nursing home flyers out here. This isn't a suburban neighborhood. It's the woods. Quiet. Isolated. Private. Whoever placed those flyers had to walk right up to my door. And the whoever wasn't hard to guess. One night while I was washing dishes, someone knocked on the door. It was Mrs. Klein, my 74-year-old neighbor, widow, gentle soul, who brings me homemade pies once a month. She whispered, "Samuel, last week I saw Ryan in your backyard." It was almost 10 at night. A coldness spread through my chest. My backyard, doing what I'm not sure she said. But he was standing near your back door, staring at the lock, like he was studying it. I thanked her, closed the door, and leaned against the kitchen counter, my palms flat on the cold surface. Ryan was never the kind of man who fixed things around the house, and he certainly wouldn't wander behind my home on a freezing night, unless he was looking for something, or trying to install something, or planning to enter the house without me knowing. But the detail that shattered everything, the moment that made the whole picture snap into place, happened in late November. One quiet afternoon, Brittany stopped by alone. She smiled sweetly, sat at the kitchen table, and said she needed help with health insurance forms, then casually asked, "Dad, can you give me your full birth date and the last 4 digits of your SSN? Oh, and your oldest previous address. They need it for verification." Back then, I didn't second-guess any of it. I wanted to believe her softness was real. But on Christmas Eve, when I stared at the forged signature on that photocopied deed, everything made sense. The information she asked for, full birth date, last 4 digits of my SSN old address, were the exact 3 pieces of information the bank uses for identity confirmation over the phone. I stood there, the truth hitting me like a cold wave. They hadn't started their plan in December. They had been preparing since fall, maybe longer. And I, the man who raised them, fed them, protected them, was the last person to see it. On Christmas Eve, when Ryan slapped that stack of forged papers into my hands and told me the house was his, it wasn't that sentence that broke me. It was the realization that two people I once called family had decided I was just an asset to transfer a name, to imitate a signature, to forge an old man they could quietly remove from the picture. And that Christmas Eve was not the night they began betraying me. It was the first night their long, calculated betrayal finally revealed its face. The morning of December 26th, Eugene was wrapped in a thin layer of fog after a winter rain. It felt like the whole town was still asleep. But I wasn't. I hadn't slept at all. I spent the night staring at the streetlight through my window, listening to the wind scrape against the eaves like a slow warning. I needed the truth. Not guesses. Not feelings. The truth. I drove to the bank at 8:05 a.m. right as they opened. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with old carpet. The card scanner beeped steadily at the entrance. Everything looked ordinary, except for what was waiting for me behind the glass office door. Her name was Megan, early 40s, brown hair tied back neatly, the kind of loan officer whose voice is firm enough to be professional, soft enough to calm the anxious. She looked at me, then at the stack of papers I placed on the desk. "I'd like to review everything tied to my name," I said. "Everything that's happened in the past 3 months." Megan nodded and turned the monitor slightly in my direction. "When you called about the refinance notice, I already had suspicions. Go ahead and sit down because some of this is unusual." My heartbeat felt heavier, like something was dragging it downward. Megan began reading. "First, the refinance. The refinance request was officially canceled," she said, "because the verification didn't match. But the important part..." She stopped, looked directly at me. "Before it was canceled, someone called us, claiming to be you." The room went silent, so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. I asked slowly, "What? Did they say they confirmed your date of birth, the last 4 digits of your social security, and your previous address on Elm Street?" I closed my eyes. Elm Street. The house Mary and I lived in. Sold more than 15 years ago. Only family would know that. Megan continued, her voice low and steady, but when we asked one of the older security questions, they couldn't answer. So they hung up. A cold breath traveled down my spine. That wasn't a stranger. It couldn't be. Next, a Home Depot credit card. Megan lifted the second document. "Someone tried to open a new credit card in your name at the Home Depot in North Eugene." I frowned. "I've never opened a card outside this bank." "Exactly," she said. "The application was denied because the address didn't match the utility bill." Utility bill. The one thing Ryan couldn't forge because everything was still in my name. It felt like hearing a metal trap snap shut, but the hunter's fingers were caught in it. Then Megan opened the third file. There was a reverse mortgage application filed in your name. My chest tightened. I swallowed. "I've never applied for that. My mortgage was nearly paid off. My pension covered my needs. I didn't need a reverse mortgage. But someone drowning in debt did. Ryan and Brittany. Everyone in town knew about their money problems. I just never imagined they'd go this far." The fourth file appeared. They also filed for a debt consolidation loan. $30,000. I heard something in my mind, like a stone dropped into a deep well. Was it approved? I asked. No. Your signature didn't match what we have on file. A forged signature, just like the one Ryan shoved at me on Christmas Eve. My heart pounded, but my face stayed still, cold, controlled. People who've been betrayed too many times learn to stop showing the pain. Megan typed a few more notes, then paused. There's one more thing, and I need you to stay calm. I lifted my eyes to hers. Mr. Brooks, 10 days ago, a new phone number was added to your account. It's labeled. She hesitated. Guardian number, as in your legal guardian. I shot to my feet. Guardian. Yes, she said carefully. The system shows this person claimed to be your legal guardian. They provided their name, number, and relationship. My voice came out rough. What name? Megan swallowed. The air grew thick, heavy in my throat. Ryan Cooper, she said. The room seemed to shrink around me. I could hear the hum of the air conditioner, the sound of papers shuffling from a nearby desk, the scratch of someone else's pen. All of it faded, then collapsed into silence. What had Ryan done? A guardian, a legal guardian. In America, that word isn't a joke. It isn't paperwork. It isn't something you file casually. It is the first step toward conservatorship, a process where the court hands full financial control of a person's life to someone else. A weapon used by greedy children against aging parents. Cases like that covered the news for years. Ryan was trying to make me one of them. Megan continued. I removed the number immediately. But this shows someone is trying to demonstrate that you're no longer capable of managing your own affairs. Cold. A cold that seeped all the way into my bones like ice forming from the inside out. This wasn't just about stealing the house, not just the refinance, not a reverse mortgage. They wanted total control. Megan leaned forward, her voice soft but razor sharp. My advice, Mr. Brooks, is to work with an attorney right away. What I'm seeing isn't random. I gripped the papers tightly. My fingers trembled not from age but from rising fury, steady and fierce. I spoke slowly. Thank you, Megan. Thank you for standing on the side of the truth. She gave a sad little smile. Not everyone has someone to stand up for them, Mr. Brooks. I nodded. But I still have something they don't. What's that? I looked out the window at the thin winter rain falling across the parking lot, like lines of quiet warning. I'm still in my right mind. When I stepped out of the bank, one thing was certain: Ryan and Brittany weren't testing the waters anymore. They had entered the execution phase of their plan. And when someone tries to strip me of my rights, tries to turn me into a helpless old man they can control, they're about to learn something. Men who've been cornered don't kneel. They fight. And they never fight halfway. The next morning, Eugene was still soaked in fog. A thin film of moisture clung to my windshield as I drove down the pine-lined road toward downtown. I didn't turn on the radio. No music. No voices. Just the sound of my tires on the damp pavement and the steady, heavy rhythm of my own heartbeat. I knew I was about to do the most important thing I'd done since Mary died: protect my own life. Harriet Martha Kenley's office sat on a quiet street, an old Victorian house converted into a law practice. A wooden sign hung out front, painted white with clean black lettering: Elder Law, Estate, Guardianship, Defense. The one place where people my age still had a voice when their families tried to take it from them. Martha Kenley, 62, gray hair, tied neatly, eyes sharp but warm, looked at me for only a few seconds before she spoke. Mr. Brooks, you look like a man who's just walked through a battlefield. I answered softly but steady. I think I'm only at the beginning of it. She nodded and gestured for me to sit. I placed the folder on her desk, the forged photocopy, the refinance letter, the strange emails, the nursing home flyers, the timeline of everything. Martha went through each page slowly, carefully, not skipping a single detail. And the more she read, the darker her expression became. When she got to the Guardian number added to my bank account, she set her pen down. "Do you understand what they're trying to do?" "I'm beginning to," I said. She turned her chair fully toward me, fingers interlacing. "This isn't a mistake. This isn't a misunderstanding. This isn't a family disagreement." She paused, looking straight into my eyes. "This is a clear pattern of elder financial exploitation, the kind we see when adult children try to seize their parents' assets before the parent even realizes what's happening." Her words tightened something deep inside my chest. Not because I was surprised, but because someone finally said aloud the thing I'd been wrestling with in silence for months. "I need you to tell me every detail," Martha said. "No emotions, just facts." And I told her. Each scattered memory, each subtle sign. The refinance letter. I never requested the address change phone call, the debt consolidation email, the missing garage key. Brittany asking for my birth date, SN digits, and old address, the 2 nursing home flyers, Ryan, in my backyard at 10 p.m. The words "Dad, the house is mine now" on Christmas Eve, and the photocopied deed with the forged signature. Martha didn't interrupt me once. When I finished, she stood and pulled 3 stacks of documents from her printer. "Mr. Brooks, from this moment on, every step we take must stay ahead of them. We can't fall behind, not even for a day." I straightened in my chair. "What's the first step?" I asked. She handed me the first stack. 1. Capacity declaration. This is the key to shutting down any attempt at conservatorship. A doctor will sign it, but first I need your signature acknowledging your mental competence. I signed. My hand didn't shake. No reason left to shake. She handed me the second set. 2. Revocation of any unauthorized transfer. This immediately cancels all transfers, authorizations, or requests made about your property, including anything they may have manipulated with your accounts. I signed again. Then the third set. 3. County red flag request. If anyone files for guardianship, the system will alert me, your doctor, and the county clerk instantly. They won't be able to do anything behind your back again. I signed a third time. When I set the pen down, Martha studied me like someone assessing a soldier who finally put his armor back on. "Congratulations, Mr. Brooks. As of right now, they're no longer ahead of you." I stood to leave, but Martha lifted a hand. "Sit for one more moment. I need to check something." She turned to her computer, fingers tapping fast and precise on the keyboard. The room grew strangely quiet. Then she whispered, just one word, but it carried a chill. She lowered her glasses and stared at the screen. "Mr. Brooks, you need to hear this." I stepped closer, heart slowing, as if bracing for impact. Martha rotated her monitor toward me. "A week ago," she said slowly, "the county received a request for a mental competency evaluation. For you." A PDF was open on the screen. The applicant's name sat in the top right corner. Brittany Miller. My breath left me like someone had punched the air out of my lungs. My voice cracked. I had no idea. Martha leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing sharply. "They're not waiting for you to become vulnerable. They're trying to manufacture your vulnerability." The room seemed to shrink around me, every sign, every hint, every uneasy moment collapsing into one chilling truth. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't anger. This wasn't impulsive. This was a plan, a deliberate, calculated plan, built over months. Martha placed her hand flat on the desk. I'll shut this down immediately. But Mr. Brooks. I looked up. This war, she said, has only just begun. When I stepped out of Martha's office, the sky had cleared. Snow clung to the roof of my car, the wind slicing across my spine like a reminder Ryan and Brittany didn't just want the house. They wanted power, control, my silence, and then the rest of my life. But they overlooked one thing: the man they tried to turn into prey was done being afraid. And when a father is pushed to the edge, every strike he throws is forged like steel in fire. As I drove back along the narrow road that cut through the southern woods of Eugene, the afternoon sun hung low. Its pale winter light fell across the remaining patches of snow, casting a cold sheen like polished steel. My house stood where it always stood, quiet, familiar. But I knew. From now on, quiet no longer meant safe. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Immediately, the instinct I'd honed over decades as an electrician, the same instinct that once saved me from a live wire, screamed a sharp warning. Something was wrong. The first thing I noticed was the living room rug. It was shifted about 2 inches to the left. Most people would never see it, but Mary and I always kept it aligned perfectly with the sofa legs. I stood there staring at that rug like it was a living piece of evidence. Someone had been inside, and that someone wasn't me. I moved toward the file cabinet. The door wasn't shut. It was open by a single notch. I never leave it open. Not once. Not since the days when Mary reminded me to close it every evening. I touched the handle. Cold. Not weather cold, but the cold that comes from knowing someone's hands were there before yours. I checked the drawers. Nothing obvious was gone, but everything was slightly out of place, as if someone had gone through every folder, every envelope, searching for something specific. When I walked into the kitchen to check the back door, I saw the lock. It was set to the wrong notch. 3 notches exist on that lock. Soft latch. Standard lock. Double lock you can only open from inside. I always lock it on 3, but now it sat at 1. Someone had opened it. Someone had come in from the back. A faint scent lingered in the air, sweet, heavy vanilla mixed with berries. Not mine. Not Mary's. Not the scent of this house. It belonged to someone else. I turned back to the living room. When I knelt to check under the sofa, I saw it. A pastel pink membership card. The logo read, Brittany's Glow Studio, and the name printed bold, Brittany Miller. VIP member. I picked it up. It felt like metal cold, unforgiving. In that moment, everything I had suspected snapped into perfect, terrifying clarity. They didn't just want my assets. They had been inside my home, walking through my rooms, searching drawers, touching my things, flipping through pieces of my life. And they did it casually, as if the house already belonged to them. A knock at the door broke the silence. I startled but steadied myself. When I opened it, I saw Mrs. Klein, my 74-year-old neighbor, silver hair, soft eyes, always carrying more worry than she let on. Samuel, she said, her breath turning to fog in the cold air. I think there's something you should know. I invited her inside, poured her a cup of hot tea. She sat across from me, glancing around as if to make sure no one else was listening. Last week, she said quietly, Brittany came to my house. I froze for what I asked. Mrs. Klein's hands tightened together. She asked me if you've been confused lately, if you've been forgetting things. losing track of time, if you've had trouble keeping your balance. My chest went cold. The exact questions people ask when they're preparing to seek guardianship. What did you tell her? I asked. I told her the truth. Samuel is perfectly fine, independent, sharp. Nothing wrong at all. I felt more grateful to her than I could express. But she added Brittany didn't look disappointed. She just smiled, a very strange smile, and said, I just want to help him move somewhere more suitable. Somewhere suitable. Assisted living, nursing homes, the same places from the flyers shoved into my door. I closed my eyes for a moment. I thanked Mrs. Klein for telling me and for not hiding the truth to protect my feelings. Before she left, she laid a gentle hand on my shoulder. Be careful, Samuel. Something about this is very wrong. I know I told her, but they think I'm weaker than I am. She nodded, her old eyes sharp. I've lived long enough to know one thing. The person pushed into a corner always fights the hardest. After she left, I closed the door. The house fell silent, not a peaceful silence, but the heavy kind, like a thick blanket pressing down on my chest. I needed evidence. I couldn't rely on instinct anymore. I called Mark, my neighbor 2 houses down, whose security cameras captured the back road and part of my yard. He answered immediately. Sam, come grab the footage. I've got video from the night that nursing home flyer showed up too. I walked over and picked up a USB drive. The footage was about 30 minutes long, shot from the camera behind his shed facing the wooden fence between our properties. I opened it on my computer. 18 seconds, nothing. 47 branches swaying. 1:12, a figure appeared. My chest tightened. Ryan. Black coat. Hood pulled low. Walking along the fence like someone running a survey. He crouched, pointed a flashlight at my back door lock. He wasn't passing by. He wasn't wandering. He was checking the lock, checking for cameras, checking for ways in. I stared at the screen, my hands clenched into fists. At 12:36, Ryan finally walked away, but turned back once as if confirming something, as if he had calculated the blind spot in my home security. The video ended. The room was filled with nothing but the whisper of wind slipping through the doorframe and the sound of my heartbeat, slow, steady, ice cold. I sat up straighter, staring at the blank screen. Ryan had trespassed into the last private space of my life. Not to visit, not to help, but to measure, to plan, to prepare. Like a predator. And I, the prey they believed was growing weaker, losing clarity, easy to corner, they forgot something. A prey that knows it's being hunted doesn't run. It waits, watches, and strikes when the moment is right. With a blow the hunter never sees coming. The night of December 29th settled over Eugene with a thin, icy drizzle. Not quite rain, but enough to make the entire world feel cold and damp, like the air itself, sticking to your bones. I sat alone in the living room, all the lights turned off, letting only the firelight flicker across the walls. I wanted quiet. I needed quiet. But quiet, just as I expected, didn't last. 9:12 p.m. Tires screeched in my driveway. A car door slammed. Then hurried footsteps pounded up the porch steps. I didn't need to look. I knew exactly who it was. The knock that followed wasn't polite. It was the kind of knock someone uses when they believe they have the right to enter your life without permission. The knock of ownership, not family. I turned on the living room light and cracked the door open 5 inches, no more. Ryan stood there, his face flushed from the cold, but his eyes lit with something that wasn't concern. Brittany hovered half a step behind him, arms crossed, chin lifted, looking at me like she already knew how the scene was supposed to end. Ryan didn't wait for an invitation. "Dad, we need to talk." I blocked the doorway with my body. I didn't ask for a conversation. "You need to hear this," Ryan said. Voice stretched tight like a wire ready to snap. I didn't answer. I didn't open the door further. I let them talk in the cold, the same cold they had dragged into my life for months. Ryan inhaled, trying to sound controlled. "Dad, you haven't been stable lately. Everyone sees it. You're distracted, confused." I stared at him. "Who is everyone?" "You," he said sharply. "I'm saying you're not capable of handling finances or living alone anymore." Brittany added her poison-laced sweetness. "We just want to help. At your age, managing a house this size and your money, it can be dangerous." A thin smile touched my lips, too small to be called a smile. "And who exactly do you two think you're talking to?" Ryan stepped closer, using that condescending tone children adopt when explaining the world to an elder they think is fading. "You don't understand. We've been taking care of your financial responsibilities for months. Your bills, your accounts, your paperwork." I cut him off. "I never asked you to, and I never authorized anything." Ryan's jaw tightened. "You don't always know what you've asked for." That line that calculated little stab was aimed directly at the idea of mental decline. I froze for half a second. Not because I was hurt, but because I couldn't believe he dared say it. A son. Looking his father in the eye, claiming he doesn't know what he's doing. Brittany fanned the flames. "If you keep acting like this, we'll have to intervene. For your own good." I opened the door 1 more inch, just enough for them to see my eyes clearly. "It's too late," I said. Ryan blinked. "Too late for what?" "For everything you two have been doing behind my back. I signed a revocation. Everything you attempted has been voided. Legally. With my attorney notified." Brittany's eyelids fluttered. "Are you threatening us?" "No," I said, voice flat and calm. "I'm stating a fact, and from this moment on, every action you take will be documented." The air froze between us. Ryan stared at me like he'd been slapped, not from pain, but from the realization that the senile old man narrative was starting to crack. He tried to recover. "Dad, you don't know," I said quietly. "You don't understand." A heavy silence settled on the porch, and then Brittany made her fatal mistake. She slipped. Not out of stupidity, but out of arrogance, the kind that grows in people who think they've already won. She snapped, "He's put up with you long enough. This house is going to be sold anyway." The words dropped like a blade hitting stone. There was no taking them back. Ryan spun toward her, eyes wide with warning. But the damage was done. Her words landed in front of me, shattered, and revealed the truth inside. They weren't here to help. They weren't afraid for my well-being. They weren't worried about my memory. They wanted money. This house, worth nearly $600,000, could wipe their debt clean. Could cover Ryan's failures. Could keep Brittany's collapsing salon boutique alive. I looked at them, at the naked greed in their faces, and saw the truth I had been forced to accept. Betrayal isn't an accident. It isn't confusion. It isn't a mistake. It's a choice. I stepped back, my voice low but sharp as metal. "You didn't come here to take care of me. You came to take what doesn't belong to you." Ryan slammed his palm against the doorframe. "If you keep acting like this, you'll ruin everything." "I'm not ruining anything," I said. "You're doing that yourselves." Brittany switched to pleading. a desperate, sugary tone dripping with calculation. If you would just cooperate, everything could go smoothly. I closed the door. Not hard, but with finality. The lock clicked into place behind me, and the sound echoed through the house like a line being drawn in steel. They stayed on the porch a few seconds longer. I could hear them arguing, Ryan hissing at Brittany, Brittany blaming Ryan. Then footsteps retreated. An engine started, and their car faded into the cold night. When silence finally returned to my home, I exhaled slowly, not out of fear, but because the battlefield was now clearly marked. They thought I was a weak old man, someone easy to sway with a few lines about concern, someone who would bow his head simply because of age. But I had seen their true faces. I had heard their real intentions. I had watched their plan peel apart in front of me. And when a father is pushed out of his own home, he doesn't weaken. He wakes up. And once a man wakes up, there is no force on earth that can push him back into the dark. January 2nd. While the rest of Eugene was slowly waking up from the holiday haze, I got out of bed with a different kind of weight pressing on my chest. Not age, not anxiety, but the certainty that when greedy people get stopped once they don't quit, they change tactics. I brewed my morning coffee. The soft drip of the machine sounded like a quiet countdown before a storm. At 7:42 a.m., I opened my email, and the storm began. The first message, confirmation IRS mailing address successfully updated. I read it twice, then a third time. My heartbeat didn't rise. It didn't fall. It simply went cold. I had never changed my IRS address. No one can do that except the account holder. So who did I check the details? It was a fake IRS email, a sophisticated one, the kind designed to trick older folks into believing it's real. The confirmation link led to a suspicious website. I knew immediately it was a trap. If someone changed my IRS address, every tax notice, PIN refund, and verification code would be sent to the new address. And the new address sure as hell wasn't mine. I took a long breath and documented the evidence. This was the next phase of their plan: cut off my information, then take my assets. 9:10 a.m. I walked out to the mailbox. Between discount flyers and the electric bill was a thick envelope from the HOA. I opened it, standing right there on the front path. Warning disturbance report, 12/31/2024. I read each accusation slowly. I allegedly yelled in the middle of the night, tried to hit a neighbor, banged on someone's door, and appeared unable to control my behavior. None of it was true. Not one word. And then I saw who submitted the report, submitted by Brittany Miller. Neighbor-family relation. My jaw tightened, but I didn't let myself get angry. Not now. Anger was exactly what they wanted. An angry old man is unstable. An unstable old man is unsafe. An unsafe old man can be declared incompetent. I folded the paper neatly and set it on my table. Piece by piece, their blueprint was taking shape. They were building a file titled Samuel Brooks, mentally unfit. This wasn't a family dispute. This was a process. 10:22 a.m. The second letter arrived, this one from Adult Protective Services. My neck stiffened the moment I read the header, Welfare Check Inquiry. Possible self-neglect. I sat down. I read every line. Someone claimed that I wasn't eating properly, might be forgetting medication, kept my home messy, was showing signs of self-neglect. I looked around my cabin, tidy, organized, just like always. I didn't need to guess who filed the report. APS is a classic step used by people trying to force guardianship. Paint the parent as incapable. 2. Generate official concern. 3. Present it to the court as justification for control. I felt like I wasn't just being pushed into a corner, I was being dragged onto a stage where they'd already written my role, the confused old man. But I wasn't playing that part. That afternoon, while I was clearing the backyard in preparation for snow, Mrs. Klein came over with a folded sweater in her hands. "Cold out here, Samuel. I found this. Mary always loved seeing you wear it." I gave her a warm smile, but she hadn't come for the sweater. I saw the real reason in her eyes. "Samuel," she said gently, "Brittany's been talking to the neighbors." I figured. I answered. "She told people you've been acting strange, that she's afraid you're not fully aware anymore. She said eventually you'll need to be moved somewhere. Safer." I chuckled low, humorless. "Safer," I repeated. "For who?" She put a hand on my arm. "I told everyone I don't believe a word of it. But Samuel, she's spreading a lot of things about you, and some folks listen." I looked toward Ryan's backyard just a few houses away. A curtain shifted quickly as if someone had been watching. I nodded. "I know. And I'm ready for them." 7:03 p.m. I was reheating a bowl of soup when the landline rang. Unknown number. Portland area code. I picked up. "Mr. Brooks, this is Jacob from Evergreen Realty. Just calling to confirm tomorrow's appointment for the interior appraisal." The spoon slipped in my hand. "I'm sorry. What did you just say?" "The appraisal for January 3rd, he repeated. "Scheduled on your behalf." "I didn't schedule anything." Jacob paused. Let me double-check the file." Silence. "Then it says here the appointment was made by Ryan Cooper. He stated you were having difficulty managing things and needed the appraisal in order to sell." I closed my eyes. It hit me not hard but with perfect clarity. They weren't preparing to take the house. They had already started selling it. Without me. Without permission. Without waiting. My grip tightened around the phone. "Jacob, I need you to record this," I said, voice steady as steel. "I am the sole legal owner of this property. I did not authorize any appraisal, sale, repair, or valuation of any kind, and I am requesting this fraudulent file be deleted immediately." A sharp breath came through the line. "Yes, sir. I'll cancel the appointment right now and send written confirmation. Do it, now." I hung up. The living room was so quiet I could hear the winter wind pushing against the pine trees outside. For the first time in months, I didn't feel anger, or hurt, or panic. I felt clarity. They wanted to fight by smearing me, fabricating stories, manipulating the system. But I would fight with something stronger. Truth. And the law, the very weapon they underestimated. And soon, Ryan and Brittany would learn the one truth every young schemer forgets. An old man who has nothing left to lose is the most dangerous man of all. January 5th. Eugene was drowning in a thick winter fog, the kind that makes streetlights look half swallowed, as if the world itself is holding its breath. I drove to Martha's office with a feeling older men know well, not fear, not dread, but the cold stillness that comes before a door opens to the truth. When I stepped inside, Martha was already waiting. Her thin reading glasses rested on the tip of her nose, a thick stack of documents sitting in front of her. This wasn't like the last meetings. No more collecting. No more piecing things together. Today was confirmation. "You're here," she said quietly. "Good. I have a lot to show you." I sat. She opened the folder. First, Martha began. I received 3 phone calls from Brittany Miller in the last 48 hours. My eyebrows lifted. Why Martha hesitated, choosing her words so they wouldn't hit me too hard, too fast. She's been asking about your life insurance beneficiary status. I didn't breathe for 2 full seconds. 3 calls, I said, voice tight. 3, she confirmed. She pretended she was just confused about the process. Asked whether beneficiaries can be changed. Asked if Ryan could be listed instead. Asked what would happen if the policyholder were to pass. A slow, heavy cold settled under my ribs. Brittany wasn't just after the house. Not just the guardianship. Not just the bank accounts. She was thinking beyond that. Thinking about the day I wouldn't be alive. A thought colder than any Oregon January. Martha slid another document forward. Second, Ryan submitted a self-declaration to the county. A declaration of what I asked. She turned her screen toward me. A PDF. A county form titled Self-Statement of Cognitive Decline. Writer Ryan Cooper. The content. My father forgets meals. My father doesn't remember if he paid his mortgage. My father loses track of time. My father is unsafe behind the wheel. My father behaves erratically with neighbors. I read every line slowly, not because I didn't understand, but because the blood in my veins felt like it was starting to freeze. All of this is a lie, I said. My voice was low, controlled, like thunder that hasn't cracked yet. Every word Martha agreed. But they're building something. These statements are preparatory steps in a larger file. A larger file, I repeated. She turned another page. Emergency guardianship petition. For a moment the room went silent, so silent I could hear the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above us. Emergency. The most dangerous kind. With emergency guardianship, they could strip me of control over my finances, my medical decisions, my home within 48 hours, if they convinced the court I was a danger to myself. I exhaled slowly. They've advanced this far, farther, Martha said. She pulled out a newly printed sheet and placed it before me. I found this in the county system, a signature verification request. Supposedly from you. I lifted the page. The top signature read Samuel Brooks. The bottom was a copy of my real signature from my 2012 mortgage file. One of these is not from your hand, Martha said. I stared at the forged signature, and immediately I saw it. The tilt, the pressure on the curves, the uneven pull on the capital S, the awkward drag on the B, the unnatural angle of the finishing stroke, the kind of mistake someone makes when they're trying too hard to mirror a hand that has signed thousands of documents over 40 years. And the person forging it was either bold, arrogant, or unbelievably careless. I looked up. Left-handed, I said. Martha blinked. Explain. I'm right-handed, I told her. Ryan is left-handed. This signature has the exact slant pattern of a left-handed writer trying to imitate a right-handed signature. Martha leaned closer. You're certain I taught that boy to sign his name when he was 8, I said. I know every nuance in his handwriting. A heavy silence settled between us. Then Martha spoke quiet, sharp, unforgiving, Mr. Brooks. This is no longer elder exploitation. This is fraud. Document fraud. A criminal offense. I stared at the forged signature again. Not because I was shocked, but because this was the first piece of evidence that Ryan and Brittany couldn't wiggle out of. Fingerprints can be wiped. Stories can be rewritten. Lies can be repackaged. But handwriting. Handwriting is a trap they walked into willingly. Can we use this? I asked. Use it, Martha said. It's the counterstrike you've been waiting for. She began assembling the documents. I'm filing for a formal signature analysis asset protection orders and a block on their emergency guardianship attempt. I looked toward the frosted window, snow beginning to pepper the glass. Martha, I said slowly, do you think they'll stop? Her answer came instantly. No. People like them don't stop until someone forces them to, or until you make them too afraid to take another step. I nodded. On Christmas Eve, they tried to throw me out of my own home. For months, they built a false narrative that I was losing my mind. Now they were reaching for my insurance, my autonomy, my life. But they had finally made one mistake. They left a trace. And I, a man who spent his career identifying the tiniest flaw in an electrical circuit, was never one to ignore a trace. I folded the forged signature page and slid it into the file. Martha, I said, voice steady and iron-heavy. From this moment on, they're not the hunters anymore. She looked up, meaning, I said, rising to my feet. It's my turn. January 6th. The wind over Eugene that night wasn't just wind. It screamed through the tall pines like something alive, like a warning, pulled tight across the throat of the forest. Inside my house, I kept the lights low, only a soft amber glow from the kitchen spilling into the hallway. The kind of light a man uses when he expects a knock and doesn't want to look surprised. I knew they would come. People like Ryan and Brittany, people who build their lives on entitlement and desperation, never wait for daylight. They strike when they think their prey is weakest. 8:46 p.m. Headlights swung across my living room wall, bright enough to carve harsh shadows onto the ceiling. An engine shut off. A car door slammed hard. Then another. I stood up slowly. Not with fear, not with nerves, but with the steady, cold clarity of someone who's finally done running. Then came the knocking. Not polite, not respectful, not the kind a child uses when visiting a parent. No. This knocking was the kind that says, "Open the door because I believe I own everything on the other side of it." I opened the door only a few inches, just enough to look them in the eye. Ryan was in front, face flushed from the cold, but his eyes, they burned with a strange mixture of anger, panic, and something darker. Behind him stood Brittany, arms crossed, chin lifted, her red lipstick as sharp as a warning sign. Her eyes scanned the house behind me like she was already deciding what went where after I was gone. Ryan didn't wait for an invitation. "Dad," he said sharply, "we need to talk. Now." I stayed exactly where I was, blocking the doorway. "Then talk." He glanced at Brittany as if needing her approval before saying the next rehearsed line. "Dad, you're not safe living on your own anymore. Everyone can see you're getting confused, distracted. It's not your fault, it's age." I stared at him without blinking. "Who I asked is everyone." Ryan swallowed. "We've seen it for months. You forget things. You lose track of bills. You mix up dates." "You're describing someone else," I replied calmly. Brittany stepped forward, voice dripping with that artificial sweetness she used when she wanted something expensive. "We're trying to help you, Samuel. At your age, managing a house this size, handling your finances, it's too dangerous." My lips twitched into a faint smile. "Is that what you tell yourselves at night?" Ryan stiffened. "Dad, don't make this harder than it has to be. We've been handling your financial responsibilities for months." I cut him off immediately. "I never asked you to. I never authorized you to." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Dad," he snapped, "you don't always remember what you authorize." And there it was. the knife they'd been polishing for months finally thrust forward. I didn't react, not outwardly, but inside a cold wall of steel locked into place. Brittany, sensing a shift, added, "If you keep refusing help, we'll have to intervene, for your own safety." I slowly nudged the door open another inch, just enough so the warm light spilled onto my face, illuminating my eyes. "Too late," I said. "Excuse me," Ryan asked. "I already signed a revocation." Ryan blinked. "What revocation? The one that nullifies every unauthorized action you've taken behind my back. Every form you faked. Every request you submitted. Every lie you told." Brittany's expression faltered. Her mask slipped for half a second. "Samuel," she whispered, "are you threatening us?" Said, "I'm stating facts. Any action you take now, big or small, is documented. My attorney has everything." The air around us tightened heavy as winter ice. Ryan stepped forward so quickly the step creaked beneath him. "Dad, bank records show—" "You mean the records you tried to alter," I interrupted. His mouth hung open. "Banks don't release cognitive assessments," I continued, "unless the customer signs a medical disclosure. So tell me, Ryan, who fed you that script?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. Silence settled over the porch. A sharp, brittle silence that could crack with the slightest movement. Then Brittany, too arrogant to stay quiet, made the fatal mistake. She raised her voice, pitched high with frustration. "He's been dealing with your messes for months. This house is going to have to be sold. Whether you like it or not." The words left her mouth like a knife someone dropped by accident, loud, sharp, impossible to take back. Ryan whipped his head toward her eyes, furious, but it was too late. I had heard everything, clearly, perfectly. I let the weight of those words sink in, then said quietly, "Finally, the truth." They froze. I continued, "You aren't here because you're worried. You aren't here because you care. You're here because you need money. And this house, my house, is the lifeline you're trying to steal." Neither spoke, because the truth is always harder to deny when spoken out loud. I reached to the side table and lifted a thick folder. I didn't hand it over, I simply held it where they could see the seal. "This is my certified capacity evaluation, signed by a physician. Dated December 27th. Ryan's face drained of color. "And this," I said, lifting the second binder, "is the revocation canceling every false filing, guardianship attempt, and fraudulent request you've made." They froze like deer in winter headlights. "No bank account of mine," I said slowly, "will be touched again. No IRS address will be changed behind my back. No emergency guardianship petition will make it to a judge. And no appraisal, sale, or refinance will happen to this house." Ryan's face twisted. "You're ruining everything," he yelled. "No," I said softly, stepping closer until we were nearly nose to nose. "I'm stopping you from ruining me." Brittany's voice lost all pretense of sweetness. "You're making a mistake, Samuel. When your world collapses, don't expect us to fix it." I smiled a razor-thin smile. "Oh, I'm counting on that." Her eyes narrowed. "You didn't send that paperwork anywhere," she hissed. I leaned in, lowering my voice to a whisper made of ice. "Not only did I send it, I sent copies to someone you don't know about." Ryan's face went chalk white. "Who?" he whispered. I shrugged casually. "The person who will go straight to the court if I ever have an accident." Ryan stumbled back half a step. Even Brittany's hands trembled slightly. "You're not allowed to threaten us," she snapped. "I'm not threatening you," I replied. "I'm warning you." Then I looked at them deeply, steadily, letting every word sink in. If either of you touches one more piece of my life, I will take you down with me. The wind rushed across the porch, rattling the gutters like applause for a line well delivered. Ryan grabbed Brittany's arm. They backed away. For the first time, they didn't leave because they were angry. They left because they were frightened. I closed the door slowly behind them. Not triumphant, not smug, not celebrating. Just aware, deeply aware that the balance had shifted. For weeks, I had been cornered. But that night, something changed. I wasn't the prey anymore. I had become the hunter. January 8th. The Oregon sky was a heavy, damp gray, thick enough to press down on the rooftops. The whole neighborhood felt muted quiet in a way that lets you hear the milk truck 2 blocks away and the wind scraping along the gutters. But inside me, there was no quiet. I knew what happens when people like Ryan and Brittany hit a wall. They don't retreat. They pivot. They find new angles, new tricks, new ways to take what they think they deserve. I was sitting at the kitchen table writing event notes for Martha. Every call, every document, every whisper of fraud when the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Hi, this is Amanda Lewis," a young brisk voice said. "Jacob from Evergreen Realty passed your information to me." I straightened in my chair. "Ms. Lewis, I believe we canceled the appraisal appointment." "Yes," she replied gently. "I'm not calling to schedule anything. I'm calling because I think there's something you should know." I didn't say a word. I just let her talk. Amanda inhaled slowly, as if deciding how much truth to put into the next sentence. "Yesterday I reviewed the emails and call logs associated with the appointment Ryan made on your behalf. And while checking things over, I discovered something." "What exactly?" I asked. She lowered her voice. "Ryan contacted another agent I know. He told her he's getting a house soon. As if it were guaranteed." My grip tightened around the pen. "Getting," I repeated. "Yes," Amanda said. "And there's more. He also asked my colleague if she knew an inexpensive appraiser. Someone who might undervalue things to help a quick sale." I closed my eyes. I could picture it perfectly, Ryan leaning back at a bar, beer in hand, bragging to a friend about the house he was about to inherit, except he wasn't inheriting anything. He was stealing it. Amanda continued almost apologetically, "I just felt you needed to hear it from someone who has nothing to gain. They are planning things behind your back, serious things. You've helped me more than you know," I told her. I hung up. For a moment, I let the truth settle like dust on a windowsill. They weren't guessing. They weren't hoping. They weren't testing the boundaries anymore. They had already moved on to phase 2, act like the house already belonged to them. 1 hour later, the phone rang again. This time, I recognized the number, my bank. Megan's voice came through the receiver, sharper than usual. "Mr. Brooks, I'm calling regarding a very serious attempt on your account." I exhaled once slowly. "What happened?" "Someone tried to withdraw $150,000 from your home equity line," she said. Clear, measured, but with the heaviness of a person who hates the words coming out of her mouth. The room seemed to dim around me. $150,000, I repeated. "Yes." They instructed us to wire the funds immediately into a newly opened account in California. California. Exactly where Brittany opened temporary accounts when she wanted things untraceable. I asked, why was the request stopped? Megan answered, "The signature didn't match, and the request came from an IP address previously associated with someone claiming to be Ryan Cooper. My house felt suddenly colder than the wind outside. $150,000. Enough to wipe out their debt, cover Brittany's revolving loans, buy them a down payment on another home, erase every mistake they made. They didn't just want my house. They wanted the money inside the walls. They wanted the marrow of my life. Megan, I said quietly, please freeze that request indefinitely. We already have, she replied. And Mr. Brooks, we're forwarding this to our fraud division. This is one of the most serious attempts I've ever seen from a family member. I closed my eyes for a moment. There's a kind of pain that doesn't stab at hollows. It's not the pain of being hit, not the pain of being tricked. It's the pain of realizing the people you raised no longer see you as a person. That afternoon, I drove into town to pick up a few groceries. The cold was sharp enough that every breath turned into a white cloud. The American flags outside the shops whipped violently in the winter wind. When I reached the checkout line, Emily, the young cashier who always greeted me, motioned me over. "Mr. Brooks," she whispered, "I think you need to see something." She pulled out a small USB from beneath the counter. "Our security cameras caught something last night." My stomach knotted. "Does it involve me?" I asked. "Not exactly," Emily said, lowering her voice. "But it involves your son." I felt my heartbeat deepen. She plugged the USB into a small monitor. The footage was grainy black and white, but unmistakable. Ryan, alone, hat pulled low, shoulders hunched, eyes darting left, then right, then left again. He walked straight to the hardware aisle. He looked around 3 times, then reached for something on the shelf. A lock-picking kit. Professional grade. Not for hobbyists. Not for homeowners. For locksmiths. And criminals. Emily whispered he paid cash. He looked nervous, like he knew he shouldn't be buying it. I watched the screen. I watched my son pick up the tools he intended to use on my home. My home. For a long moment I didn't speak. Didn't breathe. Then I said very quietly, "This time." He dug his own grave. Emily nodded. "Do you want me to send this to the police or your attorney?" I shook my head slowly. "Send it to me first. I know exactly when I'll use it." When I drove home, the sky was ink black, the mountains swallowing the last traces of daylight. The USB sat warm in my coat pocket, tiny, insignificant, but containing something enormous. Proof that Ryan was preparing to break into my home. Proof that everything I feared was real. Proof that their desperation had crossed into danger. I parked in my driveway and sat still for a moment, watching the soft glow from my kitchen window. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel cornered. I felt like someone slowly, calmly taking back control. They thought they knew me, thought I was fragile, thought I would break, thought I would bow my head and hand them my life. But every lie they told, every form they forged, every call they made, every signature they copied, every boundary they crossed became a weapon they handed to me, and soon I would use every single one. Not to hurt them blindly, not for petty revenge, but to end what they started, and end it cleanly at the root. People like to say karma doesn't run, it doesn't chase, it simply waits. And when it arrives, it comes in layers, quiet, cold, and unstoppable. January 25th, 3 weeks after the confrontation. I was making my morning coffee when my phone buzzed a number from Salem. I answered. "Mr. Brooks." This is the Department of Consumer Finance. We're currently investigating the company owned by Ryan Cooper. Are you aware of any transactions involving your name? I stopped breathing for one short second. I have never engaged in any business with that company, I said slowly. On the other end, the voice lowered. We believe improper use of your information may be involved. And you may want to know that Ryan Cooper has been placed on temporary suspension. I didn't speak. I didn't celebrate. I simply acknowledged what it was, the first drop of karma hitting the ground. Late February, a letter from the HOA appeared in my mailbox. I tore it open. Dear Mr. Brooks, we have reviewed the disturbance report submitted on January 2nd. We confirm the report was false. Therefore, Brittany Miller Cooper will be fined and placed under resident supervision for 3 months. I leaned against the counter, not smiling, not triumphant, just steady. The weapon she used to smear me had swung back and hit its owner. A rainy afternoon, cold enough to sting. Mrs. Klein knocked on my door, her umbrella dripping. Samuel, she said, I need to tell you something. I brought her into the kitchen and poured hot tea. She sighed. Brittany's salon. Customers are complaining. Cheap products, damaged hair, refusing refunds. The whole neighborhood is talking. Her rating has collapsed. The regulars say they won't return. I lifted my cup, letting the steam hide my expression. Brittany always thought she could outsmart people, that charm could hide her cruelty. But in her line of work, reputation is currency. And once it falls, there's no glue strong enough to fix it. Early May, a letter arrived from the IRS. My chest tightened. I knew I owed nothing. I opened it carefully. Mr. Brooks, we are contacting you regarding the use of your SSN in tax filings associated with Ryan Cooper for the fiscal years 2022-2023. I froze. Not me. Impossible. I called immediately. The IRS officer said, We understand, Mr. Brooks, but you should know Ryan Cooper is currently being audited. And during the review, his accounts were temporarily frozen. I set the phone down on the table. No relief, no joy, just calm clarity. Everything they tried to pin on me was now circling back to the ones who created it. July. The heat wave rolled into Oregon. One afternoon, I saw Brittany post publicly on Facebook. It's hard dealing with toxic family. Some people refuse to admit they need help. Hashtags. Toxic parents. Worstcha. Im doing. My best, but the comments. I had to sit down as I read them. Toxic sounds like you're the problem. Brittany, stop with the drama. Maybe tell the whole story next time. Weren't you the one with the salon scandal? No one believed her. No one defended her. I read each comment slowly. Not with satisfaction. Not with spite. Just with the sense that things were unfolding exactly as they should. September 10th. Amanda the realtor called again. Mr. Brooks, I thought you should know, she said gently. Ryan is now under formal investigation. His company found issues with how he handled certain funds. He might be out for a long time. I understand, I replied. She hesitated. Mr. Brooks, sometimes children break us in ways we never imagined. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Thank you, Amanda. October, a golden afternoon. Sunlight sliding across the backyard. I was watering the small row of flowers behind the house when Mrs. Klein walked over. She looked unsettled. Ryan came by today, she said softly. I set the hose down. You didn't hear the doorbell. I wasn't home. Well, then you're lucky, she said. He looked terrible. not like before. Brittany was behind him, pale as paper. I stayed quiet. He stood at your door for nearly 10 minutes, she continued. Knocked, looked around. At one point he looked like he might break the door down. I turned to her. She shrugged lightly. I walked over, stood right on your porch and asked, "What are you doing here?" I blinked at her, and I told him. She added firmly that everyone in the neighborhood knows what's going on, and if he bothered you again, we'd all call the police. I didn't know what to say, didn't know how to thank her. She placed her hand gently on my shoulder. "You're not alone, Samuel." And as she walked away, I stayed standing in my yard, not trembling, not overwhelmed, not cornered like before. I realized the real power they lost wasn't my house, wasn't my money, wasn't my trust. It was the ability to frighten me. November 12th, 2025. Almost a year since that Christmas Eve. I sat on my front porch with a cup of coffee watching red maple leaves fall across the yard. No tension, no fear, no sudden knocks on the door, no dread of someone trying to break the lock in the night. A car passed slowly. I caught a glimpse of Ryan, thinner, unshaven, hollow-eyed, sitting in the passenger seat. The car didn't stop. It just kept going. And for the first time I understood. He wasn't here to demand anything. He wasn't here to threaten or scheme. He came to see whether I was still standing. I was. More firmly than ever. I set my cup down on the wooden table and looked up at the pale winter sky. Karma doesn't crash like thunder. It falls like snow, soft, quiet, steady until the whole world is covered before anyone realizes it. And everything they did finally found its way back home. December 11th, 2025. Almost a full year since the night my son stood on my doorstep and said, "Dad, the house is mine now." I used to think that night would break me, but all it did was mark the beginning of the man I eventually became. This morning Eugene was unusually clear. The sunlight was thin, almost glass-like, lying across the porch and the tall pine trees I trimmed just a month ago. The air was cold, but it no longer carried that threatening edge it had earlier in the year. I pulled my wooden chair out to the corner of the porch, the exact spot where Laura used to sit and read on quiet weekend mornings. Below my feet was the rebuilt trellis, the one that took me nearly 3 months to repair. Fresh cedar, the scent still sharp. Young vines just beginning to grip the frame. A few pale purple buds daring to open despite the winter chill. This house, the place that had once been violated, targeted, treated like a prize someone could take the moment I blinked, now belonged to me again. Fully. Not because of the legal documents, not because the danger had passed, but because I stood up for the house, for my life, for myself, when the people I trusted most tried to sink me. Around noon, I walked the neighborhood with Mrs. Klein. She was one of the first people who believed me, who saw the truth long before anyone else dared speak it. "You look stronger, Samuel," she said, hands tucked in her wool coat. "I feel stronger," I answered. She smiled knowingly. "See, there is nothing incompetent about you. I've never seen anyone more clear-headed in my life." I didn't argue. I didn't need to. The truth was, this past year, after everything had been calmer than any year before it. No more looking over my shoulder every time a twig cracked in the backyard. No more jolting awake when the phone rang. No more fear that someone might break the lock again in the middle of the night. When I returned to the porch, I caught my reflection in the glass door. Older than last year. More silver in my hair. More lines across my face, But the eyes were no longer afraid. Late afternoon, I stopped by the community library, the place where I joined a weekly Thursday reading group. Diane, the senior librarian, waved at me. "Samuel, you're right on time. The new book is in the back corner." I stepped inside, breathing in the familiar scent of old paper and cedar shelves. Warm yellow light poured through the windows like honey. A young staff member, new girl, looked at me shyly. "Mr. Brooks, I've heard a lot about you. Miss Diane says you inspire people." I chuckled. I'm just an old man who learned how to protect himself. In the study room, I took my seat. For the first time in a long time. Silence felt peaceful, not threatening. This was a real life again. A life where I didn't have to fear my own sun. When I got home, the sun had gone down. There was a single envelope in the mailbox, old, wrinkled at the corners. I recognized the handwriting before I even opened it. Ryan Cooper. I stood under the porch light for a long moment before tearing it open. Inside was just one sheet of paper, handwritten, unsteady, as if the person writing no longer believed in his own words. "Dad, I'm sorry. Everything got out of control. I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I was doing what was right for my family. Please forgive me." I stopped reading. Didn't mean to. I remembered the forged signature, the fake bank calls, the attempt to drain $150,000, the falsified guardianship paperwork, the security video of Ryan buying lock-breaking tools, Brittany's voice in my living room cold as the winter wind. "You don't belong here anymore. Didn't mean to. Does not exist in that context. Not anymore." I folded the letter and set it beside the window. Forgiveness is not something a person can demand, especially when they have never understood or admitted what they've done. As for Brittany, she vanished from my life completely. Some say her salon collapsed. Others say she bounced from job to job, unable to stay anywhere. Nobody mentions her anymore. People like her disappear the moment they can no longer extract something from you. Night fell. I lit the fireplace, made a cup of hot cocoa, and sat in the exact spot I stood 1 year ago when my son delivered his ultimatum. But tonight, there was no cold edge in the air, no fear creeping through the walls, no sense of winter sealing my fate shut. Tonight there was only me alone, but not lonely. I remembered something Martha once told me: karma needs no assistance. It always finds its way. She was right. I never needed to destroy them. I never needed revenge. All I needed was to protect myself. Life handled the rest. I set the cup down and gazed outside. The neighbors' Christmas lights were glowing reds, greens, yellows, twinkling softly through the cold air. I didn't put up lights this year, but my porch still felt warm in its own quiet way. No apology could erase what happened. But I didn't need erasure. I only needed to keep walking forward, carrying every lesson the storm left behind. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't making someone else fall, it's standing again after they tried to push you off the edge. And I am still standing, stronger than ever. If you're still here listening to the end of my story, tell me, what city are you watching from tonight? Leave a comment, just one line, so I know where this story found you. And if my story touched something in you, hit like and subscribe. Who knows, the next story we tell might be yours.